As a longtime gamer, I've grown up on Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft. Somewhere along the lines though, most people choose their loyalties towards one platform. I imagine by necessity, of course. Money doesn't grow on trees after all. Others become devoted to a particular brand because they like what it stands for, or what exclusive games are on offer, the power of it, the price of it, or just what it can do. Being a gamer isn't the cheapest hobby. Getting operational with a new console, a few games and accessories will run you over $500 usually, and keeping up with new games as they come out will steadily drain your wallet. Then considering the amount of pre-order items, DLC, in-game monetization, and subscription-based applications such as PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live, and it adds up to even more. It's hard to give up that kind of expenditure, especially when your gaming library for a particular console gets larger and your attachment with it. Despite us all being on the same side at the end of the road, we are so segregated in this $82 billion world video game market. The console wars, Microsoft versus Sony versus Nintendo, Kratos versus the Master Chief versus Link. It's all a big game to get you to pledge loyalty to a brand. As of today, the PlayStation 4 has sold just about double the amount of its most pertinent competition, the Xbox One. The console has totaled somewhere in the realm of 75 million sales, compared to that of 35 from Xbox. You can ignore the red line here, which represents the Nintendo Switch. That console has only been out for 2 years. Most of this success can be attributed to more exclusive video games and a better start during the launch. The Xbox One kind of stumbled early with its mixed messaging regarding used video games, non-optional Kinect hardware integration, and its high retail price of $500. It wasn't until Microsoft started selling $400 versions of the Xbox One without the Kinect in June of 2014 did the actual console start heading in the right direction. So today, the PlayStation is in a really good spot. While it's got a ways to go to becoming a top 5 selling console of all time, these relative sales figures do prove that it has done a good job so far. And most people would consider the PlayStation 4 to be one of the better consoles to have ever been made. Still, one would hope that the success of the PlayStation would not stop anytime soon, as we all want more awesome exclusive games like God of War. But with consumers looking forward to the PlayStation 5 and most likely the reveal of it at E3 this year, I'm not so sure that Sony is in the position to sell a huge more amount of the PlayStation 4. Much like the Xbox, the new generation of consoles is most likely going to hit in 2019 or 2020, maybe 2021 at best, so not too far down the road. Knowing this, there is much hesitation in buying a PlayStation 4 right now, especially because the Pro is kind of in a janky position. 4K TVs are common, but they're not too common, and even still, PS4 Pro games running at a native 4K are only at 30 frames per second. So to those on the PC crowd looking to get into consoles and maybe buy a PlayStation 4 Pro, it's kind of a tough sell. So how do you ask people who want to buy a console now to buy a PlayStation 4 Pro, knowing that the PlayStation 5 is probably not that far off? That's one kink in the wrench for Sony right now, even though the PlayStation 4 is amazing and it's doing incredibly well. So you could say it's a nice problem to have, but still a problem nonetheless from a business perspective. One thing that games companies do to accelerate sales towards the end phase of a console lifecycle is by ramping up exclusive video game development. As we've seen with God of War, Yakuza 6, the remaster of Shadow of Colossus, and the upcoming games like Detroit Become Human, and of course The Last of Us Part 2, it's clear that Sony does understand the need to get your attention right now. And they have sure been given a gift by our old buddies Microsoft. The Xbox One team hasn't really done too much to compete with Sony lately in terms of giving us great games that you can't get anywhere else than on the Xbox One. This makes me think that they are focusing on getting the next Xbox out before the PlayStation 5, especially since they know that they've already lost this generation of hardware, at least in terms of sales. Microsoft will continue to support the Xbox One for a long time and put out the occasional exclusive game in the process, but Sony is doing a much better job, not just in terms of putting out games, but putting out good games. With the fallout of Halo 5, ReCore, and a few other games released last year, there's really not much out there for the Xbox One right now. Uncharted, Horizon Zero Dawn, Neo, The Last Guardian, some of these games made sure that 2017 was all about Sony. So in addition to this being a year dominated by Sony exclusives, that trend is well represented in the past as well. But are there enough of those games to get people excited to buy a PlayStation 4 Pro gamers who do not have a console. That's honestly a question for those interested in the upcoming PlayStation 4 exclusives, but if you like single-player games like God of War and The Last of Us, I think there's enough to get people to jump on board. Time will tell if those individuals do just that.
The giants used to gather here to trade with the gods a long time ago. Wonder if Odin was ever here.
Since the launch of the PlayStation 4, there haven't been a lot of price cuts. Launching at $400, there has only been one official price dump from Sony, that being the drop to $350 to the base PS4 made in October of 2015. You might pick it up for a few bucks cheaper here and there, depending on what version you buy, but generally, 350 smackers is what you're gonna throw down for the console. The Xbox One also currently runs $350. Thankfully, the lack of price inflation has made the console cheaper to buy over time, relatively speaking. 4 years ago, the average wage in America was a few percent lower than it is today. And what I mean by that is, if you've kept the same job since then, you've most likely got a small raise every year, increasing your income by, hopefully, the amount of yearly inflation. That's kind of how the system works. For some strange reason, the video game industry is unaffected by inflation, and prices do not rise year over year. This is the main reason why the DLC market, the free-to-play game, pre-order bonuses, and the in-game store were created to make additional money for game publishers in order to offset this rising cost of doing business via inflation. So combine that information with the fact that the PS4 is now cheaper and that game prices have remained constant, the PlayStation 4 is cheaper to buy with today's currency than it was at any point during its life cycle. But the entry fee, as such, for a new console as an outsider, is still incredibly high regardless. People just don't have a lot of disposable income, especially when you consider the average age of gamers has been steadily going down since the boom of the free-to-play and the mobile gaming revolution a few years ago. And when you consider the socio-political climate today, that point gets nailed in even stronger. The United States brings in the highest revenue of any country, colony, or territory for the video game industry in the world. Since the new Trump administration, though, there has been a great deal of litigation and tax oppression towards the lower and middle class groups of our society, which has driven people to be more financially conservative. Considering much of that group does not have a tremendous amount of disposable income in the first place, buying a PlayStation 4 Pro isn't exactly in the cards for a lot of people, especially when you consider they can get their gaming kicks for free on an iPhone. Does Sony have a problem trying to get people to buy the current version of their PlayStation 4 Pro, knowing that money is tight and people are growing averse to the idea of spending supplementary income on a hobby that they could otherwise get free? Especially since they don't know how long the PlayStation 4 is going to be in circulation, with the PS5 coming around in a couple years. I don't know, but what I do know is that Sony has done a great job with the PlayStation 4, and it's a great system to have, regardless if you can afford it or not, and regardless if you think it's not going to be a worthy investment for the PlayStation 5's looming ascension just around the corner. For now, I will turn it over to you guys to leave me your comments on the following question: should people wait for the PlayStation 5? Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Much love, and we'll see you in our next video. Peace, love, and happiness. Till then.